So I felt like didn't nobody want me. It's that
Okay.
thing about, not being loved. I guess not having that proper love as a child, that a child should have. It was like, I felt like I lost again in life. It was like, okay, we built this together, and then because I didn't know what was going on, I just lost everything. I'll never forget this. It was a November. Dude came in there on the job, pulled a gun on us, and asked us to enter the register. Backed out, and then, like I said, my dad passed away. I started drinking heavy. Like I said, that was one time I fell into a depression. I was sitting there in the bottom of that bottle one day, and I kid you not, man, God voice. He said, I didn't take your dad for you to become an alcoholic. He said, I took your dad because, number one, it was his time to go.
What's up, YouTube? Top Flight USA, back with another one. How you doing, brother?
All right, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. All right. I just met you over here at this community outreach center. What you got going on today?
Oh, man, we just out here getting the good word in, coming together as a community, trying to figure out, how we going to get work this, get everybody taken care of in a little situation.
Okay.
We're a group of people that, we out here in tents.
Okay.
And we come from different walks of lives. Our stories are different, but we trying to come together and help one another and, get to where we need to be in life.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
you don't see that a lot. Especially with our type of people.
That's true. That's something I've been on my mind and kind of speaking on for years. We need to, instead of, hurting one another, we need to come together and help one another.
That's right.
Put our differences aside. Some days we don't get along, some days we do, but that's just part of reality.
That's right.
Me personally, my little situation, I moved up here to be closer to my daughter. And it's been, a little struggle here and there, differences. I had to learn to adapt to things and, different mindsets and cultures. But, I've been in like a car wreck and I lost my dad. So I kind of like,
oh, wow.
I kind of fell into some depressions. I kind of fell into a depression twice and stuff like that. Because it was like a lot of things hitting me at one time that I wasn't used to. Like, I didn't. I'd have been married, divorced and stuff, so I pushed through that. And so I'm not like crying, but it's just like, we go through things and situations that we never experienced. And so, I kind of look at the whole situation as a test, to make me stronger, to help me gain more wisdom and more knowledge. So when I'm where God wants me to be, I won't throw it away.
That's right.
But I know right now I'm going through the storm, and like I said, some days are harder than others, but hey, I get up every morning, I say my little prayer, I read my little scripture, whatever, and I keep pushing,
Okay.
It's a challenge, but hey, like I said, we out here coming together as a community, doing what we need to do. I know today we got a little meeting with some people from the city, so like I said, we trying to get this thing going,
Okay.
And the thing with the city is just like the second meeting. It's just kind of laying down a floor plan to see, what's the next step, how we gonna do this and how we gonna do that.
Okay. That's amazing, man. To get in touch with the councils of the city. Try to talk to the people that's in power to come back to the community and help out. I like that a lot. Well, let's get to know you a little bit. Let's start from the beginning. What's your name, age, and where you from?
My name is Raphael. I'm 41. I'm from East Texas.
East Texas?
Yes, sir.
Where about in East Texas?
A little town called Nigton.
Okay, right there on your shirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a little town. I can't really say what that's short for, but we can catch on. But
Oh wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I just come from a little backwoods country town. Little black cowboys. If that's the way you want to put it, I don't know. We just country folks. We work, go to church. Whatever.
That's what's up.
We have like trail rides and stuff. Some are small events, some are big events. But but that's pretty much. I'm just a simple old country boy.
How was Nigton, Texas, different from North Carolina?
Well, I guess you could say it's like a smaller community, everybody know each other because mostly everybody's family.
Okay.
Or, everybody grew up together, even like my grandparents, the people they knew they grew up with and stuff like so. It's like one of those little small country towns where everybody knowing each other from generation to generation to generation. So, and I really want, I miss it, and I know it's kind of crazy to say, but I miss the smell of the horse dew and just the country boy thing.
So you're a real country boy.
Yeah, I miss this. Like we got pine trees down there. I miss the smell of those fresh pine trees. When you wake up in the morning, step out on the front porch, have you a cup of coffee and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the life I enjoy and I miss. But like I said, right now, I got a 13-year-old daughter. I'm up here. I'm trying to be a good father. Be a part of her life, make sure she grow up to be a strong young lady, and just I just want to know her daddy love her.
Okay.
No matter what I'm going through, I'm gonna be there for her.
Right. So, are you saying you came to North Carolina to be in your daughter's life?
Pretty much. That's pretty much the deal was, and like I said, I didn't count on the unfortunate events that I was gonna have to experience, but like I said, that's part of life, though, man. You never know.
All right. Let's just get to know you a little bit. Let's talk about briefly on your childhood, and then we'll work our way up to this area right here.
All right.
Did you grow up in a two-parent household?
I would be honest with you. It started off that way. My parents divorced, and most of my childhood, I just bounced from house to house. It wasn't.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, it's because I guess. Can I put this? I guess a lot of my relatives that I live with, they didn't know how to handle what I was going through in my mind as a child because like my parents divorced and and I was just like people just sending me to that house and that house. So as a kid, I just kind of felt like, I felt like I didn't nobody want me. It's that thing about, not being loved. I guess not having that proper love as a child. That a child should have, and so it kind of, to be honest, it kind of messed with me throughout my teenage years and most of my 20s, so.
Were you the only child?
No, it's me. Well, see, it was 7 of us. My dad was married twice.
Okay.
So I'm the oldest out of 7.
Okay. You're the oldest out of 7.
Yeah.
And when your parents divorced, how did that make you feel?
I mean, at the time, I was a little too young. I was too young to kind of understand everything that was, the ins and outs and everything that was going on. But like I said, I bounced from place to place, and like I said, it made me feel like, I didn't belong, or people didn't want me here. I didn't this and that. I was lost. Mentally, I was just lost.
Wow.
Because I wasn't.
You didn't have anybody to turn to or anybody you could have talked to about that?
I mean, like my grandparents took me in like here and there, and by the second time they took me in, I was a teenager, and then by then I was just my mind was just so congested with, stuff, bad things I heard about my dad, and then bad things I heard about my mom, and then me, when you're in your teens, you finding yourself as a you stepping into adulthood, so you're trying to find. So with the hormones changing, and then with all this mental stuff going on, trying to figure myself out and what's going on in life. I was a little, I wouldn't say rebellious, but I was full of anger.
Okay.
Just being honest, I was full because I was confused. I didn't understand a lot of things. So I tried to get into sports, like I played football and ran track, so that gave me some kind of stability. That gave me some kind of way to release that aggression in a positive way. I rode horses and stuff like that, but
So you was pretty active.
Yeah, I started to stay, to keep my mind distracted, but sometimes that anger and frustration would slip out, and I'd say the wrong thing or make the wrong decision or whatever. But
Did you ever get in like any trouble or anything like that?
I mean, I had a few little misdemeanors on my record. That's about it. No felonies and nothing like that. But yeah.
Okay. So how was you in school? Like, what kind of student were you?
I was your average AB student. I really didn't talk. I was real quiet, and but I mainly just, like I said, which kind of shocked people because I was on the football team, but I didn't just really hang out like that. I wasn't one of the popular kids.
You're pretty tall. How tall are you?
6'5".
Okay, yeah, man, you're a pretty big man. Were you able to graduate high school?
I didn't finish, to be honest. I mean, I tried to go get my GED a few times, but I stopped. I had to stop because I needed to work more to pay bills. So as I said, that was like in my 20s, and I thought, and someday I do want to go and get my GED. I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to get myself financially where I need to be, and then make sure my daughter good.
Right.
That way I can have time open so I can really work on getting that GED. Because I ain't gonna lie, it bothers me because I need that.
Right.
It's something I know I need.
And you mentioned you had to work. Is that the reason why you stopped going to school, or?
Well, I went to trade school for it was a 2-year course, and I finished in a year and a half. And but yeah, I had to stop because, like I said, I had bills and stuff, and so that's why I stopped going to the GED classes because I was with actually me and my daughter's mom was together at the time, and she had already had a kid, so I had to stop. Like I said, I had to stop taking my classes because the bills and stuff,
Okay.
things would pop up and we needed more money, so I had to work extra,
Right.
hours and stuff like
And
that.
how old was you when you had your daughter?
I was 20, I think I was 28 when she was born. 28, yeah, 27, 28 when she was born.
Okay. So you didn't finish school. You was working like odd jobs here and
Yeah,
there.
just working.
And
Yeah.
where was your life at that point?
Well, like when my daughter was born, actually, me and her mom, we had a little trailer house. We had 2 vehicles. So we had a home.
Okay.
We had transportation. Things were a little bit, especially in East Texas, things were a little bit cheaper. A little bit, if you was connected to the right people, they would work with you. So it was more, you had more access to more things that you needed,
Okay.
And like I said, it wasn't an overnight thing. It was something that we had to work to get, what I mean?
Right.
And it was just, after she got pregnant, and I didn't know this at the time, but after she got pregnant with my daughter, like, her emotions started changing, and that's when we started arguing a lot. But I didn't know at the time that women go through a depression thing. They did, and I didn't know that. So
Postpartum.
yeah, and so and by 2 years later, we split up because it was this constant arguing and stuff. Like I said, at the time, I was young. I was still younger. I didn't realize what was going on with her as a woman. So, that's on that end, that's my fault. But now, like I said, years later, now I understand what was going on.
Okay. Do you feel like that's where the change was made in your life when you and your child's mother separated?
Yeah, that was a big change because it was like I felt like I lost again in life.
Okay.
Because, like I said, I'm not sitting here blaming her, putting all the blame on her because we're adults. It takes 2 to tango.
That's right.
And so, but it was like, okay, we built this together, and then because I didn't know what was going on, I just lost everything.
Okay.
And at that time, especially for a brother in East Texas, to obtain that much at that age, that was a blessing.
Right.
And so it was like, I ain't gonna lie, like it took a chunk out of me, man. Like
Right.
mentally, emotionally, it took a chunk out of me.
Right.
And like I said, since I've been up here, I've been through some things that, like I think another situation I ran into, I had up here, I was working downtown on the job, and the dude came, I'll never forget this, it was in November. Dude came in there on the job, pulled a gun on us, and asked us to enter the register. So, like, I didn't have a lot of experiences up here that it mentally, broke me.
Right.
Because, like, dude, I ain't never been robbed at gunpoint.
Okay.
That's like I said, I had the car accident, and then I was engaged to a chick, and then she backed out on me because her mom got it. Her mom wanted her to be with somebody that had more money.
Oh, wow.
And then so she backed out, and then, like I said, my dad passed away.
When did your dad pass away?
Actually, right in 2022.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel when he passed?
Dude, because actually me and my dad had actually reconnected over the years and became best friends.
Okay.
And I felt like I lost my homeboy, my best friend, because that's how we was. Because like I started drinking heavy. Like I said, that was one time I fell into a depression.
Okay.
I started drinking heavy, and I would still go to work, but eventually it started affecting my work, you know. And one day I was sitting there, I was down to my last drop in a bottle because my whiskey, Jack Daniels, you know, my thing. But now I rarely touch liquor, but because I can't, yeah. But I was sitting there in the bottom of that bottle one day, and I kid you not, man, God voice. He said, I didn't take your dad for you to become an alcoholic. He said, I took your dad because number one, it was his time to go. He served his purpose that I had him to do. And he said, number two, it's time for you to take that wisdom that he gave you and become the man that you need to be for his will, you know, for God's will. And so I said, okay, God, all right, I give in. And so then next thing I know, I want to say about a week later, after I heard that voice, I was asleep, or what I thought I was asleep. And next thing I knew, my dad was sitting up under this tree, and I swear this had to be heaven. But it was a nice little breeze like this, but it was real bright. And my dad, you know, me and my dad, we Dallas Cowboys fans, but my dad had his favorite Dallas Cowboy jersey on, and he was sitting up under the tree, and he just looked at me, and he smiled, and his lips didn't move, but I could hear his voice. He said, I'm all right. You can live. I'm all right.
Okay.
And so, like I said, it's just been a big spiritual battle, because with me, and like God is, like I said, God is prepping me to where he wants me to be. But, you know, like I said, it's some things that, you know, he's helping me overcome, especially with the things that the hardships I've already dealt with in life. Right. Even though I'm going through a hard situation now, but I understand something else God showed me, those hardships that I went through growing up. If I didn't go through those things, I wouldn't be strong enough to handle this.
That's right.
So that's what and that's the thing I had to learn and realize, you know, man, sometimes we sit back and we like, God, why did you allow me to go through this? Why this and that and that and that? And then if we don't get in that word and really see and understand, you know, why we go through this and go through that. Like one of my favorite stories is Joseph, you know, where he got locked up. He got sold into slavery. He got locked up because Potiphar's wife wanted to sleep and she wouldn't do it. I mean, he wouldn't do it. And then he got locked up in prison. But the thing that's the reason why I say his story stick out to him, because no matter what came at him, he kept his faith and trust in God, and he always came out on top. And so I kind of relate my life to Joseph. You know, I can't really use Job because I ain't strong as Job spiritually, but we all know the story of Job. But right. That man went through it. He lost everything. I mean, he lost his riches. He lost his children. Even his own wife said, why don't you just curse God and die? He said, you talk foolish, woman.